crypto people. It is the Crypto Siege with another day in the life, in the crazy life that is the digital asset space. Good morning. Happy Sunday to you. Hope you guys had an absolutely outstanding and an awesome fourth yesterday. Hope you had some time to hang out with your family and enjoy the day. But I got to tell you guys, I'm really, really excited about some information. The information I'm going to share with you today, and I think it's important. I'm going to play a video from Angie Lau from Forecast News. I think she's the head editor over at Forecast, like in forecast.news. She's the lady who interviewed Christopher Giancarlo, who is the head at the Digital Dollar Project. But until yesterday, you probably didn't know there was another guy there who was the co-lead of the Digital Dollar Project. And his name is David Treat. And he is the Senior Managing Director and Global Blockchain Lead at Accenture. Senior Managing Director and Global Blockchain Lead at Accenture, and he is the co-lead at the Digital Dollar Project. So I think it's really, really, really important to know these two gentlemen, Mr. Giancarlo, Christopher Giancarlo, and Mr. David Treat. Both of these guys have a very, very interesting relationship with Ripple. So we all know Giancarlo's background, right? The former head of the CFTC, currently at a law firm that is a law firm for the company Ripple. Okay, Accenture. I'm gonna share some information with you about Accenture here in a moment, right? And so David Treat says is at Accenture, and Accenture has a major role and partnership, if you will, with Ripple. And I wanted to highlight this first before I share the video with you guys. So this will not be an XRP Ripple Daily News in around 0 to 10 minutes. It's going to be around 20 to 35 minutes. But so if you're driving, if you're hanging out this morning, you want a good listen to on the podcast, this will be a good one. But so Angie Lau, not only does she interview Chris Giancarlo for her show, she also interviews David Treat, again, co-lead of the Digital Dollar Project and Senior Managing Director and Global Blockchain Lead at Accenture. Let me share something with you guys here. So this is from consultancy.uk. Payments platform Ripple inks deal with Accenture. Payments platform Ripple inks deal with Accenture. Accenture has struck an alliance with Ripple. This article is dated in 2015, October in 2015. Accenture has struck an alliance with Ripple, an enterprise company providing cross-currency settlement solutions for financial institutions. Through the use of the firm's low overhead and fast ledger systems, banks can, according to the firm, considerably decrease their cost in the payment domain while increasing oversight and transaction reliability. Important words to note here. We all know about the cost, considerably decreasing their cost. But while increasing oversight and transaction reliability, so that there's a transparency that is noted very, very early on. And I think I wanted to highlight this here. So when you listen to the video, it'll really bring things home. Again, this is from 2015, this deal was put together. As part of the deal, Accenture will integrate Ripple's products in its advisory services to clients. Okay, so their traditional clearinghouse may be a thing of the past as a distributed financial technologies become more and more accepted within the formal banking system. The distributed ledger system has a number of advantages to offer over traditional ledgers. Okay, so again, here's Ripple being showcased here. For those of you who can see this, I'm going to just share a little bit, then I'm going to share this video because I think it's really, really important to know. All right, so the rise of distributed transaction systems saw the story of Bitcoin make international headlines and what became a roller coaster ride for Bitcoin owners as they gained and fell dramatically in value. Another less advertised form of distributed ledger has been developed by Ripple. The company, founded in 2012, developed Ripple, a distributed financial technology enabling instant cross-currency settlement and competitive FX market making. 2015, guys, 2015. Ripple allows for direct, real-time settlement between financial institutions, offering an alternative to the complexities of today's corresponding banking system. While Ripple does offer a digital asset, XRP, the banks experimenting with and implementing Ripple today have opted to use the technology to move fiat currencies across borders, right? So that's the X-current, fiat to fiat, okay? So the partnership with Accenture will see the consultancy offer Ripple's products to its clients within the financial services industry looking for payment options, okay? So guys, important to note, I'm going to share this really amazing video between Angie Lau and David Treat. And I may interject every now and then, but I want you guys to check this out because this is a very, very insightful interview.
Welcome to Word on the Block, the series that takes a deep dive into blockchain and emerging technologies that shape our world at the intersection of business, politics, and economy. It's what we cover right here on Forecast News. I'm your host and editor-in-chief of Forecast News, Angie Lau. It is a pleasure to introduce to you right now our next guest. He is David Treat. He is, let me get this right, David, Senior Managing Director and Global Blockchain Lead at Accenture, and equally and as important, co-lead of the Digital Dollar Project. We talked with Christian Carlo last week when the Digital Dollar Project launched the white paper, and so we got a really good sense of politically how this project is very important, why it's important to the American Federal Reserve System, the fiat system for American consumers. But David, I'd love to know from you, from a technical point of view, how this is actually going to function, not only for the average person, but at the Federal Reserve level, and then also for the banks.
Okay. Yeah. No. Well, thank you, Angie, for having me on again. It's nice to see you, and very excited to talk about this project. And it really, part of the excitement is that we've been working on this for years. So our very first project, as we started to build this blockchain business, as blockchain lived in our applied research function in Accenture Labs, and we recognized it was ready to be client relevant and to build a business around it.
So I think it's very, very important to know here, we've been working on this for years, right? In the article I just read, that the deal was made with Ripple to offer Ripple's products to its clients. This was a deal inked in 2015. So I think as you watch this video, you listen to this video as well, it's important to note that there's been a fintech company that Accenture has been working with since 2015.
One of our very first clients was a central bank, and we've been engaged with them ever since. And by necessity and by character, right, they're very conservative, as they should be, because they run key aspects of our world's financial infrastructure and are key players, and being careful and considered and measured about how to implement is key. And so it's
one of their first clients was a central bank. It's just pure speculation, but most likely it was the monetary authority of Singapore. And I believe there to be some connections between Ripple and Singapore.
So
can we say who that central bank is? We know that you work with a lot of central banks, from Bank of Canada to Monetary Authority of Singapore to a lot of other key banks. But I think we can guess. So, but why was it important for central banks that at least have a little bit of that foresight to actually start thinking about it in this perspective and in this space?
Yeah, it's the financial services community overall was really the first to engage in this innovation wave, and to recognize that out of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency focus, and over the years growing up, and certainly as we got 2008, 10 into the 2010s. Financial services move first and fastest in terms of recognizing the potential of what tokenized value could mean for business processes and business flows. And so the banking system was engaged, and certainly central banks saw commercial banks and capital markets infrastructure players in particular playing, and in as much as money's at the heart of all of that in these transactions, it was natural. It was a natural point of conversation to say that there's a new innovation frontier, there's a new set of capabilities, and you need to pay attention and learn.
So very, very important to note that the banks and the financial entities, whether that be Wall Street or regular commercial banks, it doesn't matter. The financial space was indeed involved. Maybe it's the JP Morgans and the Fidelities of the world were indeed involved back in the early days in either investigating and or participating in the digital asset space, whether it be Bitcoin or other digital assets. They were engaged, like he says.
And they were pulling, right? They knew that this was something important to engage with, and they've really been pulling in all sorts of stakeholders and experts to come up the learning curve. And so
that's really different, because they're pulling. So this central bank from likely the Asia part of the world is pulling this initiative along. And here with the Digital Dollar Project, which would be America's first central bank-backed digital currency, incredible initiative there. It's really being pushed. There is no direct pull from Congress and or Federal Reserve level to pull this technology in. That's the difference that I'm hearing.
Yeah, every central bank is different, and and all of the G20 and the G40, right, will play differently because they're coming at it from different contexts. But the intensity level and the engagement is really quite pervasive at this point. So I wouldn't fully characterize it as just a push or even just a pull. There's been active dialogue, there's been active engagement, much of which will not be in the public domain.
Yeah, so that's very, very important to say. So you notice his face, and he wasn't in agreement. He didn't agree with her in the push and pull concept in terms of the United States. And he also notes that a lot of the intensity, if you will, and interest is behind closed doors, not so much in the public domain. And I think that's really, really, really important to note. It feels as though the United States is behind, and I think that is perhaps, the public persona that maybe they even want to put out there. I think that I'm a big fan of the TV show The House of Cards. Great show, and I think it really highlights what really goes on in the political world. And so much of the public stuff is a show, and all the reality of things and true intentions are behind closed doors. So I think that's important to note as well.
Again, because of the conservative nature of the systems and the functions and the scope and the groups that we're dealing with. It's never as clean as just push or pull. And yes, certainly some regions pushing faster or pulling harder, but it's a mix. If I get back to your question, I mean, you asked a big question around kind of, from Main Street, from the person on Main Street to the core commercial infrastructure, capital markets infrastructure, Fed, Treasury level. I I suppose one of the key points is that this is not, it's not a panacea, and it's not going to replace all money, certainly in the short term, and it's not going to be it's something that everyone is going to feel and touch and see. In many respects, actually, if we do it right, you'll never know that this is what was behind the scenes.
So think about that. And so it's not going to replace all money, not going to be a panacea. And in a lot of ways, if we do it right, you're not going to even know. You're not going to see it. You won't even notice it. That, to me, my friends, speaks directly to Ripple's transition from a fintech company based out of San Francisco selling software to banks. And how when Brad Garlinghouse noted that they have just, out of nowhere, he says, we're a blockchain infrastructure company. Well, right, an infrastructure is you and I don't know the inner workings of the internet. We don't know the inner workings of telecommunications. We don't know the inner workings of Netflix and Amazon, right? So all these things that are done behind the scenes, and blockchain infrastructure is exactly that. Stuff that's implemented. You're using it. You and I are using it every single day, but we don't know that we're using it. We're just using it, right? And he says if we do it right, if we do it the right way, people don't even know it's going to be seen. And so again, I think it's hugely important to note that there has been a company, they've been working with Ripple since 2015. They haven't been working with any other companies. So they've been working with Ripple, as far as I know, with Ripple since 2015, offering Ripple's products to its client. So they're intimately familiar with what Ripple has to offer. And I think it's hugely important to note that.
In some cases you will, but that's where the big focus of the Digital Dollar Project is, around the specific use cases and where it has value and where it doesn't. I think one of the harder use cases, some of the biggest progress that we've made globally in domestic faster payments capabilities and things that we may interact with every day with Zelle or Venmo or PayPal or our ability to just with our bank send money back and forth to each other seamlessly from an end user perspective, working with central bank digital currency. If we do it right, they shouldn't see a difference. It should be as easy for for me to send you $10, or vice versa. It should be relatively transparent. What is transformative is what happens behind the scenes. The gist of that direct token transfer being a single motion, a simple, simpler exchange versus today where it's me.
I'm not sure what else he could be talking about there, right? What's transformative is behind the scenes. That changing a particular currency, whether it be fiat, or whether it be fiat to fiat, or digital asset to digital asset, or fiat to digital asset. Transformative. You and I know, right? As XRP holders, we know the power behind the technology. But listen, guys, the masses don't. The masses do not know how transformative this technology that Ripple Labs has. They don't know. This guy's excited because he's on the inside and he knows. He 100% knows what's going on in the capabilities. You're going to hear some very interesting stuff later on in this video. It's just going to, it speaks to me all things Ripple.
Me messaging my bank to then message your, and you messaging your bank, and our two banks messaging each other, and it's authorization based and the like.
Pointing out the massive friction today in the corresponding banking system, and how the technology that he's been working with since 2015 rids the financial world of this friction.
A lot of what's going on is going to be behind the scenes.
So it almost sounds like beyond it being a digital dollar, you're also circumventing what some would argue is our archaic infrastructure, like a SWIFT or chips or FedWire. It would take on some of those characteristics and make it a little bit more frictionless. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, circumventing is probably not the right word, because I think those core infrastructure players actually have a potential huge role to play, because of course.
So not necessarily replacing SWIFT, but working alongside or acting alongside of like entities like SWIFT and chips, right? Working alongside, not necessarily circumventing, right? SWIFT made a big, huge move in making their technology, if you will, if you want to call it technology, agnostic, and virtual currency accepting, right? He just made that announcement in another video that Crypto Eddie covered as well. So the SWIFT is realizing that this technology is here to stay, and let's join the team. Let's join the new team, right? Instead of sitting on the bench or being kicked off the team. So I think it's important that he notes again. Circumventing is a big word. That's a strong word, right? It's kind of going around the thing, but probably more along the lines of working with.
Of course, these tokens have to move across a network. We have to be confident that they're secure. We have to have the operational capabilities to make sure that that they're going to be safe and sound. And
so here's the other part, right? These tokens have to move across a network. SWIFT has an established big time network. It's established already. So what you do is you integrate this technology into that, right? You integrate it in so you can test it in a safe way. So much of this, although it be archaic system, is in place. And these tokens, you want the tokens to move through all of the networks, right? So through the network and all those connections, all those banks, you want to have something in place. And so he's making a very, very important point that there's an established network, and we're going to have the technology work alongside and with it so that these networks, these individual banks, can participate,
and their privacy is preserved where it needs to be. So I wouldn't I've seen big engagement from the credit card players, the major messaging architecture players in the financial ecosystem, the recognition of how this gets implemented and the role that that the existing players have in either standard setting or the rails upon which these tokens move, or the ability to protect them while they're in motion. All of that is has lots of opportunity for lots of the existing players. It gets transformed. And we strip out, if done right, we're going to strip out a ton of inefficiency, and we're going to simplify and modernize architecture. But I wouldn't jump straight to circumventing and and cutting players out, because across.
Powerful words right there from Mr. Treat. Very powerful. We're going to strip down some things, but I wouldn't jump straight towards circumventing. You get that? So you're going to eliminate a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the inefficiencies, and take out a lot of the friction. But I wouldn't jump straight yet, not yet, right, to just circumventing. So it's very, very important to know they get it. The people from Accenture get what's going on.
Across the board, I think one of the things we've learned over the past 5 or 6 years is, while that initial mindset and mantra is good to inspire new thinking and to really be transformative, not incremental change, but transformative change. It's great to kind of rethink what would it be completely different. But oftentimes that throws the baby out with the bathwater in terms of the valuable roles that some of the intermediaries play, and how do you rethink those roles. So I think intermediaries and the processes and the architectures change dramatically, but that doesn't mean we're starting from scratch, and that doesn't mean that there's not a role to play for for the existing players. It's
I hear you.
It always comes back to the middle.
You want to layer on and create efficiencies. So I do hear that. Based on your experience with other central banks, what are the different possibilities of and levers that it actually provides a central bank in a way that it doesn't now?
So I guess again, one of the things that is important to realize is that many of the value pool and the value case is not for the central bank itself. It's for the ecosystem that it's providing a service to in many regards, right? So if we let's take kind of use cases from two ends of the spectrum. The U.S. is the world's largest originator of remittance payments. And this is frequently people sending money to to family or ones that loved ones that they support in another country, in another context. Those remittance payments, I think the latest World Bank figures that I looked at, right, on average globally 7% transaction fee. They can be upwards of the high teens. They can be in the 20. They can be quite costly to the people, and this is charging it's costly fees for people who can least well afford it and who are trying to do some of the best good with it, right? So the reality of what's driving those costs, it's not spurious cost, it's the messaging cost to be able to have each of the legs of the transaction, the messaging, the reconciliation, the data confirmation, the operational teams. There's a rationale to the infrastructure that's needed to be able to support that. Well, rethinking what could be done if as easily as texting that photo of your kid to mom or dad that's somewhere else, you could just as easily send that token in a single motion and transfer that value. That's the potential, right? So the cost of remittances could be brought way down. Now
I get that part, but if you're asking this to be central bank backed, what's in it for the central bank? What are the characteristics that would really make it attractive for the Federal Reserve to say, this is what we want? We need to digitize the American dollar.
Yeah, so throughout history, the dominant reserve currency has been based on the most functional, useful currency. Right. It's just if you go back to colonial area, our colonial area in the U.S. it was the Spanish real for more than a century, up until the Banking Act of 1857. And so it was based upon the fact that the Spanish real was the most pure silver coin. It was lighter in weight. You could actually cut it into pieces. This is the origin of the notion of pieces of 8. It was functional, right? And so because people could trust it and it was functional, it was the world's dominant reserve currency for a long period of time. As we think about all of the digital era that we have created and all of our progress for commerce and education and services and the like that we've created in the digital world, we've just not modernized money to match the digital world and all of that transformation. So the currency that can most quickly match the transformation we've done with everything else as it pertains to online and digital, the currency that is able to serve that digital world the best has the chance to be more widely used.
The currency that has the capability to be the most functional to serve the world. The currency. Isn't it interesting that Mr. Giancarlo does a write-up about XRP not being a security and more so a currency, right? Giancarlo working with Accenture, right? Working with the guy from Accenture on a digital dollar, and Mr. Treat here is talking about a currency that is functional and perhaps even multifunctional. Or maybe a hybrid currency is the people from England would like to say when they talk about XRP and hybrid, right? So this currency that can be multifunctional, that can serve the world globally. has a chance to win as that currency, the new currency. That feels a lot like XRP. That feels a lot like why Ripple has been going out and they put together Spring to show the different ways or the different functions that XRP can be used. It can be used as a bridge asset. It could be used in micro payments. It could be used in the gaming space. It can be used in cross-border payments. Perhaps it can be used in the FX market. Because let us not forget, in this article here, its point of fact said, the company founded in 2012 developed Ripple, a distributed financial technology enabling instant cross-currency settlement and competitive FX market making. And I get really excited when I hear this because they're talking about a currency. He is talking about a currency. And I don't think it's a small coincidence that Mr. Giancarlo talks about XRP not only as it not being a security, but being a currency. I think that's hugely, hugely important to know here. Hugely important to know.
And so does that put the dollar at risk from a reserve currency perspective? Not in the short term, but maybe over time, if something else is more functional, I think it will gain attention.
Does that put the reserve currency, the dollar as the reserve currency, in jeopardy today? No, not necessarily today. But over time, when a currency proves to be more functional, I mean, that's a $64 trillion statement right there. What is that currency that, not initially, but over a period of time, proves to be a more functional currency? I just got to think that it feels like the U.S. is going to shock the world. It's going to shock the world. It's not going to necessarily shock us, but it's going to shock the world. I'm not sure what this dollar is going to look like. What this quote unquote digital dollar is going to look like. But that's a powerful statement of currency that could, is it going to? I mean, he brings it up himself. She didn't bring it up. Is it going to replace the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency? No, probably not in the beginning. But over a period of time, it gains traction because it proves itself as being multifunctional, serving a lot of different functions. Wow, that's an interesting statement.
And so from a global monetary, from any central bank's role and responsibilities around monetary and fiscal policy, the use of the currency, how it's used, where it's used, to modernize it and bring it into the digital age, we think is very, very important.
Mark Carney, the then outgoing governor of Bank of England, right in America's backyard, in his last chapter in his role, called for global hegemony to be replaced by a digital currency to essentially fix the global economic system that has been destabilized, as he and many would argue, at the strength of the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, and she's right on point. I think she knows. It really feels like Angie knows, right? And she brings up right after this guy talks about a currency that won't necessarily place the dollar, U.S. dollar, as the world reserve currency in the beginning, but could possibly do so in the medium to long term. This currency that is a multifunctional currency. And right after he says that, she brings up Mark Carney, who called for a currency, the same Mark Carney that, right, talked about this hybrid currency that could serve the world and replace the US dollar as a currency. And we all know that no one is in control of XRP. They make a very, 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 very important part. Ripple, David Schwartz, Brad Garlinghouse, Chris Larson, a neutral reference point. This, it's not issued. This XRP is not issued by anyone. So there isn't a controlling nation, if you will, necessarily over the currency. That's appealing to other nations. It's appealing to other nations like the UK, right? Because in a lot of ways, the monopolizing, the weaponizing of the US dollar, look, nations are tired of it. So here's this currency, not owned by anyone, that serves all these different functions. I don't know of another digital asset out there that can appease, if you will, to all the other central banks of the world. Because the obvious is the ridding of the friction. The obvious is in the dramatic cost savings. The obvious is in the this means of exchanging value. The obvious is this company that is gifting the interoperability platform, which is the ILP. It's, the obvious is this software and this digital asset that it has a face to it, has a chairman and a CEO and a CTO, has a face to it, that has access, that the central banks now have access to via, right, a phone call or a Zoom call, like the Central Bank of Brazil had with the people from Ripple. All of these things put together as a whole is very, very appealing to other central banks. And all that's necessary now is the education of things like traceability, the KYC and AML. So all of these things that the central banks would want to have. There's a company out of San Francisco that can provide and explain and educate what the software and this technology can do, and who is willing to gift to the world the ILP, and has already created something that is completely open source platform, that is the XRPL ledger, with a built-in exchange in it, so that everyone can see what's going on. There is no hidden smoke and mirrors to this system. But if needed, this is already right, this permission thing, if needed for the central banks to communicate amongst themselves, that's there as well. That is in place as well. That's an option that Ripple can provide to these central banks and commercial banks as well. So they have them both covered. They have the permission network and the permissionless, right? So they have you have this what's the word I want to say? This transparency that would be necessary, right? But then they also have, we're gonna work amongst ourselves as well, right? So the Central Bank of Canada and the Central Bank, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, they can communicate and see what's going on, right, between each other. But it'll be between each other, between themselves, amongst themselves as well. So Ripple, the company as a whole, is offering this suite of products that the central banking system, the world's global financial banking system wants. And is acknowledging that it needs. They have already acknowledged that they need to cut down these costs of cross-border payments. They've already acknowledged it. They've actually reached out to like the UN and maybe even the WEF and said, we need to get something in here to save on these costs. And it's just been one company since day one that has been working with the regulators since day one to get this accomplished. It's a very, very powerful thing. I'm going to share just like a few more minutes of this video, but it's pretty powerful stuff.
How does that contrast with this initiative here, the digital dollar initiative, the project to have a CBDC of the US dollar? Is that threatened by potentially a global, a globally backed digital currency that would be then the global hegemony currency for the world?
I'm not the right one to comment about the global economic policy dimensions, so I think I'll leave that. I will leave that aside. I think there's some really interesting policy and sovereign and cultural and societal questions that are embedded, in that concept. I think the thing that's incredibly encouraging is that the technology now affords us the ability to have those conversations and to challenge orthodoxies and to rethink how the world works and lives. So so our focus is on the potential and inspiring the right level of policy and social and cultural discussions and dialogues to pick what do we choose and what do we value. And at the heart of it, I think I'm looking forward to all of those debates and discussions.
And you got to think as well, again, we talk about this on the channel all the time, that this current administration is not going to just let this technology be used and recognized across the world, acknowledging the benefits of this technology that Ripple Labs, this good old US of A company, has, and not leverage that it's a good old US of A company, right? Not leverage that the good old US of A, because of the current administration doing things like Executive Order 13772, when it talks about a new financial system, the executive order, right, that perhaps allow for Ripple Lab, where Ripple was mentioned, allows Ripple to go out and do things to change the world, if you will. Maybe allowed is not the right word, but an executive order signed by President Donald Trump, put together by Mnuchin and another guy, right? A new financial system, right? He can point to, the current administration can point to that executive order, 13772. And then he can again point to, current administration can again point to this current executive order that released the regulatory restrictions of fintech innovation. Right? Release the unshackled the OCC, unshackled the SEC, unshackled the CFPB. This current administration can point to those, to both of those. And point and say that, well, this company from the good old US of A, this current administration acknowledged this company, gave them the freedom, met with them behind closed doors, all of those different things. The current administration could espouse to the world, because trust and believe. In the end, there's a political play going on here. In the end, trust and believe that. Guys, so listen, I'm going to wrap up this video, but I want to encourage you guys to check out Forecast News on YouTube. Go listen to the rest of this video because they talk about, he gets giddy and excited when he talks about global interoperability and how this technology can provide for that. Acknowledging this is something that the world wants, this quote unquote level playing field. Talks about interoperability several times in the last 17 minutes of this video. Very, very important to know. And I think it's also important to know Angie Lau talks about, she makes a huge point because she's trying to get him to say some things. So she's kind of feeding off what he's saying, but she's also taking the audience where she knows this really thing is really ongoing, where all this is really going. And she says, you know what? I get it. I get it. I totally get it. It's not a technology thing, right? The technology is here. The technology is available. We've been working with it for years. The technology is here. It's a political issue. She says that. It's not a tech. She says, I get it. It's not a technology issue. It's a political issue. Without question, guys. All right, so I'm going to wrap up this video like I do all my videos, guys, and remind you of this. Old money doesn't want you to win. They don't want us to win. They would rather us remain a cog in their perpetual wheel of trading our time for dollars. They don't want us to play in the same playground that they play in, but we allow our money to work for us. This is our chance to win, guys. The digital asset space is our chance to win. We are in the midst of the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of man. Are you participating? Or are you standing on the sidelines? Here's what I do know, that the battle for you has already been fought, and the victory is yours. Go get it. I'll talk to you soon, guys. See ya. Bye.